Hey everyone, this is David Gerber, and this is part two of the top 10 in 1,000 days exercise. So, in part one, if you haven't watched that, watch that. It's the very basic, simple explanation of the exercise. It's just writing down 10 or more things that you love to be true about your life in 1,000 days from now that just would excite you, lights you up, if that could be true, and just to brainstorm that. And so, for this one, I'm going to expand a little bit, give some examples, and say a few other things. So, foundationally, this exercise is built off of this idea that in any great story arc, any great movie, book, etc. And I want to invite you to look at your own life like this. There's a really beautiful story arc of just desire, obstacle, transformation. And so the main character of a movie has a desire, then there's obstacles that desire, and then the main character has to transform in order to overcome those obstacles so that they get the life that they desire. So if you think of any favorite movie, whether it's Star Trek, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Braveheart, gosh, I could think of so many movies. Even I recently watched Field of Dreams, and the main character has this desire to actually like take risks, and he doesn't want to become like his father who had dreams but never actually followed them. And so it's a really beautiful movie about how the main character had this desire, then there was all these obstacles, and then he had to transform in order to achieve his desires. And so desire, obstacle, transformation. And then the other quick thing I'll say is this idea of somebody studied, Nancy Duarte studied Steve Jobs's keynote addresses and tried to figure out why were they so good. And the main reason she discovered really was that he had this arc where he would talk about what is and what could be, and what is and what could be, and what is and what could be. And so he would show you the flip phone, and then he'd show you the iPhone, or he'd show you this huge stack of CDs, or this huge portfolio of CDs, and then he'd show you the iPod. And so it was constantly pulling us into what could be. And so as you're stepping into this exercise, one of the biggest things is, as I've talked with people a lot about this, is some people think that if I want more, that means I'm not grateful for what I have. And so I want to dispel that myth of, I think you can be 100% grateful for the life that you have and also want to expand. So you want more, you crave and desire more. And that might just be like impact. That might be generosity. That might be, who knows what it is that's more. And it might be some things where, you want to travel, and it's somewhat of a selfish pursuit, we might think, but it might actually make you a better person at the end of the day. But really, I would invite you not to have moralistic judgments on what it is you want. Maybe you want a classic car that you've always wanted, a car to drive on Sunday afternoons. Maybe you've wanted to take this trip. Maybe you've wanted to, give X amount of money away. Things like that. I want to invite you to just start to expand that. So as you're thinking about this, one example, because sometimes people get stuck on where they're at. And so what I encourage you to do is to just start with a list. Just start with things that, man, I'd really like to, make X amount of money. So let's just say you start off and you go, I'd really like to make $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 salary. Maybe you start there. Or maybe for some of you listening to this, it's like, man, I'd really like to make $1 million. And then what you can do is take that thing and you can move it, you can expand on it. So at least if you have a list to start with, then you can expand. So maybe for you, it's, I'd really like to give away $50,000 this year. So that's the starting point. And then when you start to dream and push that from possible to impossible to absurd, then what you can do is you can play with it and go, well, what if I could give away 60,000 or 70,000? Or what if I could give 100? And again, it starts to get to the point of absurd depending on where you are at financially in your life. But then you can start to stack things. So for example, one thing that I noticed as I was doing this exercise myself was I really love going on safaris. It's just one of my favorite things. I love to see wild animals in their habitat. And so I dream, and I was like, okay, so for me, it would be, if I started at the very basic list of, top 10 in 1,000 days, it's go on a safari, go on one safari in the next 1,000 days. Then I start to expand on that. I go, well, what if I could go on one safari every year? So like I go on 3 safaris roughly in 1,000 days. Now I'm starting to expand. And I thought, well, what if I could go on a safari every 100 days, which means in 1,000 days, I'd go on 10 safaris. So now we start to really push of what I think is possible. and achievable. And what I want to do is keep expanding that to a point that is fun, or lets my brain expand and really enjoy the brainstorming of that. So then for me, I started to stack things. So now it was like, okay, I want to go on safaris. Then I thought, well, wow, what if I could combine going on safaris and my love of that? What if I could combine that with my work of executive coaching with executives and athletes? And what if I could bring executives and athletes on safaris with me? And I thought, well, that would be cool, because now it's a part of what I do for a business. And I get to create these experiences where I'm coaching someone before and after safari, maybe, or maybe it's just a one-off trip where it's a part of the safari is the coaching aspect of it. Maybe there's fun there, or maybe I just bring friends with me and it's not anything to do with work. And then I thought about all these things and I thought, let's keep expanding just because it's fun for me. Not that any of this needs to happen. Again, it's purely brainstorming. So I go from, I want to go on these safaris. I want to go with people, maybe make it part of business. Then I thought, well, okay, so one of the things about safaris that's sometimes challenging is there's really long flights. And so I thought, well, man, it'd be cool if, I could fly first class on all of the flights that I go on. And then I keep expanding. Again, now it starts to get really absurd. It's like, okay, well, what if every time I go on safari, it was like completely private flight experience? I know we started to get ridiculous, but imagine if it was me and clients flying private to safari. And again, it just starts to get expansive, but I wouldn't be mad about that. I wouldn't be upset that that was the case. And so what if that could be true? And then I have these experiences with clients that really like alter their life, and they go back and they change their communities and they change the teams that they work on. And it revolutionizes their marriages and their parenting and their entire life. So like now that's something, top 10 in 1,000 days, that would blow my mind. If I have clients who get to go on these amazing safari experiences, they get to have that transform and change them, or it's part of their transformation. And then they're speaking about that. They're sharing it with their teams. They're writing books about their experiences. That excites me because now it starts to be an impactful thing in the world. That's one idea. Another way you can take something expansive is, let's take a generosity goal, because one of the values that's important to me and to my community is generosity. And so imagine it is giving money away. And I remember sitting with a guy one time who had a decent amount of wealth and was good at fundraising with other people. And for him, he started off with thinking, oh, I'd love to give away, $10 million. I'd love to be a part of fundraising $10 million in the next, 1,000 days. And then we kept pushing him to expand it. And all of a sudden he's thinking, man, it'd be really cool. It'd be pretty mind-blowing and absurd if I could somehow be a part of giving $100 million away. And that wouldn't necessarily be just for him, but it'd be his fundraising efforts, him calling people that he knows, him putting on events, etc. And so then it expanded. So he started off with raise some money, raise 10 million bucks. Now it was 100 million. And it started to get to a point where he almost got kind of like giddy about it. And so whatever it is that you put on your list, as I mentioned in the first video, have some things be possible, have some things be impossible, have some things be absurd. Again, just brainstorming. And this point of the exercise, you're not executing on anything. That comes later. This is just dream. Just get it on paper to start to elicit what are those desires that you really have for your life, for those experiences, for the emotions that you would experience when you're completing these objectives, these things, without committing to any of them, with just allowing yourself to dream. And then once you've done all that, then later on, you can look at it and you could go, okay, what are the first small baby steps to achieving these things? What are the small steps that it would take to go and make these things happen? So for me with the safari, the first small step was to start talking to some of my clients, some of the executives and athletes that I work with, and say, hey, if I put something together like this, would you be interested? That's baby step number one. Now, people could have said yes, they could have said no, they could have, whatever it is. What's fun is I've gotten really, really positive feedback on people saying, yeah, I'd love to have an experience like that. So you just never know, to start floating your dream out, start talking about it, start to take those steps, and just start to have fun with it. But that's later. This is brainstorming. Just wanted to share a couple of examples with you to get the juices flowing around how you can do the top 10 in 1,000 days exercise.